You are listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfre and Bill Lowell. We want to help demystify marketing to reduce risk, drive more and better opportunities, and grow your business. Are you ready to master marketing?
All right, well, if you're not ready, you better get ready quick, because I'm Pete Monfre and this is the B2B Marketing Mindset. Welcome to episode 111. I feel old when I hear that number. Today our guest has helped many marketing services companies, agencies create liquidity events, accelerate growth, as well as brokering buy and sell dealers. He's the host of Second Bite podcast, and he doesn't mind dumb questions, which is good for us because we're going to be slinging some at him today. So if you've hit a wall with your firm, you'll want to listen to today's program. But real quick, if you're seeing this video live, do us a big favor, hit like, comment, or share it. That tells LinkedIn to share the video farther and wider. It also does wonders for my self-esteem. So I just want people to like me. So just hit that like button like it's a rented mule. And so real quick, the B2B Marketing Mindset is brought to you by AgencyFoundersNetwork. It's an online platform for marketing services companies. So if you're a design firm, digital agency, media company, whatever you are, we're dedicated to helping 1,000 agencies break the chains of being just another vendor and help them become more strategic and, by the way, worth more. So stop being a commodity, become a trusted advisor. You can join for free at AgencyFoundersNetwork.com. So let's introduce my co-host, Bill Lowell, founder of Business Development Directives, our go-to marketing research partner, and my only friend. Good to see you, Bill.
Good to see you as well. Is that why you are looking for approval and want so many people to like you? Because
you're
scared of our relationship? Is that what it is?
Yes, I just don't, I've one friend. I mean, things could go wrong.
Yeah. Well, I'm appreciating the friendship and I enjoy it. And I'm looking forward to today's episode. I think this is great. And many of us might even fit into this same category of what we're going to be talking about today, because my firm is 35 years old and I'm sure, maybe there's things to do with that. So this will be very interesting. At least I hope. So that'll be great. I'm looking to learn a lot.
And, I'm very interested in this too, because I didn't sell my firm when the time came because we had a lot of other things going on in my personal life, and it really didn't allow for me to do that. And I look back at it and I just wonder what could have been, right? I don't think there was any other decision to really be made. So, but let's welcome our guest in. Today we have Todd Taskey from Potomac Business Capital. His little title's cut off on the screen, but I'm going to fix it really quick like magic there. Welcome, Todd. So you're in Bethesda, Maryland, and I'm not sure I gave a very good description of what you do. So if you could take a couple minutes to introduce yourself and share what you do.
Sure. Thank you for having me as a guest. The best dressed podcast on the internet for sure. So congratulations on that. So at Potomac Business Capital, what we do investment banking work. We are specifically focused in the digital marketing space. Our clients have between $1 million and $5 million of EBITDA. We only and always work for the seller. And as you mentioned, we host a podcast called the Second Bite podcast. And that's descriptive of what we do for clients. Most of the clients that we work for are interested in using a transaction to accelerate their growth, to take chips off the table, and to do different things with their business, but to stay in it and to continue to grow it. And so that's what we really help people do. And we have worked with folks that wanted to move on from their business. Bill, like you mentioned, after 30 some odd years, we had the great success with a group in Chicago called Man Marketing. And Ed Maloff, who is the M in Man, had done it for 40 years and didn't want to do it anymore. We found a great buyer for them that paid him 90% cash at close, gave him a fair value for the business, was great to deal with on and on from that standpoint. So that's what we do for people that are founders or CEOs that have something in the digital marketing space, outsource sales, we in that size range, we tend to be the go-to firm to get good results for our clients.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the program. As I said, such an important topic, and there's a lot going on right now economically, and especially for agencies. And I did take the liberty of looking up a couple of things here, and so let me see if I can share my screen successfully. So one thing, budgets have, since COVID, there's a little chart here from Gartner that shows that budgets, they fell to 6.4% on average, marketing budgets, in 2021, but then they started climbing again, 9.5, 9.1, 2024 down to 7.7. And so there's definitely some challenges in the industry, and I don't know if that means maybe it's a good time to sell. But a couple other quick charts. Job growth down 2024, basically way down. And the other chart that I saw was consumer sentiment index. Get your chat garbage off my screen, people. 66.4, and again, it just shows kind of a precipitous drop over time. So, there's a lot going on, and that was one of my questions for you was, what does this mean in terms of, I think for a lot of agencies, if they've been in business for a while, is it a good time to sell, or is it better to hang on when things are getting tight in the economy?
Has no impact whatsoever.
Interesting.
How's that?
That's
right.
I like that answer.
It's interesting because the transactions that we do, you'll never read about or hear about. It'll never make the paper. It'll never do anything. But we do transactions where guys get between $5 and $50 million. When the deal closes, it's meaningful for many people, the transactions that we do. But there's a big ecosystem, as you guys know, in the digital marketing, performance marketing, outsourced sales marketplace. And there's lots of private equity money that has continued to move into that space. And those guys continue to grow and need more and more. And we continue to see more money shifting from traditional into digital. Some people are always going to do that better than others. And when private equity plays a significant role like they are now in growing an industry, they're great partners. And I'll give you an example. I got all these trophies over here, but we did a transaction a few years ago with a company called Social SEO. They've been rebranded since then. And they were about 2 million of EBITDA on 10 million of revenue. We did a transaction with them and they kept 40% equity in the business. 4 years later, was the end of 23, their EBITDA was $16 million. They'd done 4 acquisitions, their retention improved, they've added clients, they've added services, they've done a whole bunch of things. Our guys have had more fun over the last 4 years than they've had at any other time in their career. Their business their piece is probably worth 5 or 6 times the amount that they sold just 4 years ago. And they've been having a great time doing that. So during this period where we've had COVID and we've had the market soften and strengthen and this and that, they've continued to go about their business, providing really good service to their customers and growing a more valuable business. And there's many, many stories, like that.
That's just good to hear because, I'm talking to agency founders all week long, every week, and I haven't heard one say, oh man, we're just cranking this year. Everybody's down, some more than others. I know that there are some agencies that are focused, let's say, on healthcare or other types of niches that just are steady, but most of them are down right now. And hopefully, but I also know that when you have such a fragmented market like we have, this is when things start getting rolled up, like acquisitions start happening. So I was thinking that, it's got to be a strong market to sell if you have the right kind of agency. And we'll be talking about that a little bit, but Bill, what are your thoughts on that? Oh, you guys have been pretty steady over there.
We have, and we've got several different niches though, including, like you said, healthcare, but we work a lot in the association market too, and those are usually, they're not affected at all by the marketplace. But I liked what Todd was saying, and I guess if I understand him correctly, it's like there are ways to make a deal that can end up being good for a lot of people. So instead of his company that he just gave us an example of just selling and walking away, they kind of took it to a different level by doing a different approach and then having some capital infused into that business. I don't know, Todd, if I'm reading that correctly, but
I'll give you a good example. I posted on this earlier in the year. Most entrepreneurs in the size that I work in, this 1 million to 5 million of EBITDA, most entrepreneurs there stay pretty focused and keep their head down on their business. And they're working on these metrics in their business to make the business more valuable. There, however, are macro economics or business characteristics that will impact the value of that business for a period of time. And here's a good example. Last December, we sold a business called EndRock. Ned McPherson is the CEO there. You can listen to Ned. He was on our podcast, Ned McPherson. You can just go to Second Bite Podcast and look up Ned McPherson in the search bar. But I got introduced to Ned over the summer, and he does conversion rate optimization. Great business. And I said, Ned, I know 3 companies that are desperate for really good conversion rate optimization. And he wasn't interested in doing a transaction. I said, well, let's talk to him. So he gave me a video, and he gave me a Loom video of him doing an audit for a client. I shared that with 3 groups. We wound up having a phone call with 3 groups. We got an offer from 3 groups. The offer he accepted was from Power Digital, which is a great private equity backed firm out of San Diego. And it's been a great fit for him. He got a significant chunk of cash. He got a significant chunk of equity. And it also solved his biggest business problem, which every good transaction should do. And the biggest business problem is a fill in the blank, right? It's different for different people. Ned's, a roughly $10 million revenue business doing conversion rate optimization for large D2C brands. He's a small company. It's hard for him to get in. It's hard for him to get noticed. He doesn't have a sales team. Power Digital has 200 e-commerce clients. Power Digital has 9 salespeople. All of Ned's problems from a growth perspective have been solved. Ned's the chief growth officer at Power Digital, a 1,200 person firm. And it happened because there was a window of opportunity out there in the marketplace. Power Digital is not going to buy another conversion rate optimization business. They're satisfied, right? So those windows open and close. And sometimes, and this is the tricky part, right? Because sometimes you really need to take a look at those opportunities. I would imagine you guys and probably most of your listeners get emails at least once a week. Hey, we're interested in buying you. Hey, I got a buyer. Hey, this, hey, that, whatever it is. You could do that full time. So it's difficult to spend time on all of those potential opportunities, but they're out there. And the comment I think I get most from people is, I didn't realize you could do this. I thought if I sold my business, I had to go find another job, or I would be a boring employee at that company for some period of time. And that's just not the case. Our folks typically get cash, a big chunk of cash. They get equity, and they play a very, very senior level role in the growth of the business that they've joined.
That's good news. I remember back in the day, and it's a little foggy for me because it's been quite a while now, but I must have been having conversations about this at some point, because I was led to believe, and this is what I heard from people. They said, Pete, you got a good company, you got operational manuals, all the things in place, but your assets go down the elevator every day. And so what is there to sell? Uh, you know, and when I was talking to you, Todd, and I was talking to another gentleman yesterday or 2 days ago, whose name escapes me, but it'll come to me. I think you know him actually, but he's doing DealCon.
Yeah.
Which
Tom.
Tom, right? And he
Yeah.
said, no, totally wrong. You know, that doesn't matter at all. Actually, it has to do with your capabilities and your systems that you have in place and your book of business and all kinds of other things that bring value. And so, that kind of leads us to our next kind of question is, so what is it that creates value in a not just in an agency, but really it's a service business. I think agencies are service businesses. They have some unique
They are.
characteristics, but it's a service
Yep.
business, right?
Correct. So what creates value is repeatable, predictable revenue. And the more repeatable and the more predictable and the more consistent that revenue is, the more valuable the business is. And I say revenue because revenue eventually dribbles down to EBITDA, right? Your net earnings. And so I understand that your most important asset leaves on an elevator, gets on the elevator at the end. They also get on an elevator every morning and they show up to work. So, what about that, right? And they produce, you have clients that are on a monthly recurring revenue. They could leave anytime. I know, but they've been here for 3 years or for a year and a half or for 2 years, right? So there's predictability to that. Service businesses have been sold for, I don't know, decades. So if anybody listening that has a service business, yes, it's sellable. A lot of this is just logic. If I buy your business, what do I get? You get all my people, you get the relationships, you get the contracts, you get this, and this. Okay. How do I know it's going to keep going? Because we have 3-year contracts, because our retention is this, because, and you build up a capability set so that the buyer is comfortable that that will continue. And then the buyer will do some things to protect themselves in a transaction. We can get into the details of that if you want to, so that they can bring on your business and add it to their business. And in the great hope that 1 + 1 will equal 3 or 4 or 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they also know your space. And I'll give you an example. Let's go back to NROC and conversion rate optimization. Power Digital knows what conversion rate optimization is. Power Digital knows and does conversion rate optimization. As they said, we don't do it as well as we need to for our clients. We want to be the best at it. So they just brought all that over. That adds a ton of value to their business, right? So from that perspective, there is clearly value. The question becomes how much value, and that is typically a multiple of what your EBITDA is.
Okay. That's fascinating to me. And one thing that caught my ear was, 3-year commitment. I read the average tenure of a client at today's digital agency is 6 months. And so we have that problem too, but I don't know if that's more about smaller agencies. I mean, it's interesting to talk to guys like you because it gives me a little bit more perspective on the marketplace, but are these bigger agencies that are signing 3-year deals, or is that the exception rather than the rule? Or
that 3 years is certainly the exception. But I'll give you an example. We have a client right now. They're focused in the small business market space. They sign clients up to a 3-year engagement when they sign. You never have somebody more bought in or sold on what it is that you do than the moment that you sign them. When you ask for a 3-year commitment, you're going to lose some people for sure. They don't care. They want people that'll be committed to them for 3 years. And at work, and their retention numbers are tremendous. I've got another client that we're working with now that they're focused in the legal vertical. So they sell to law firms. They do a year. And then after that, they go month to month. They've got a couple dozen clients that have been with them for well over 2 years.
yeah.
So I think all of that value and retention and the rest goes to the point of differentiation that an agency has. And so oftentimes we see greater value for clients that have a point of differentiation or some specialty. Maybe it's healthcare, Bill, like you mentioned. Maybe it's in legal. Maybe it is in conversion rate. Maybe it's in paid media, whatever the case may be. But something like that not only adds value, it certainly makes it a lot easier to bring on new clients. It makes it easier to have a sales pitch and a presentation that makes greater sense to a more specific market space.
One of the things that I think is really interesting. I mean, I think that this gives us a little bit different way as a business owner. I think it gives us a little different perspective because some of us were thinking somebody would ride in, buy our firm, and they want to be an entrepreneur, and then they're just going to take over. And I think some of us never really thought about maybe it's another larger, bigger agency to do that. I always thought, it's going to be somebody else. But early in our career, we had a client that was a very large accounting firm, one of the top accounting firms in this country, and they wanted to buy us. I mean, it was too early in my career. I don't want to say I was too naive, but I was. And then they started getting into all of the revenues and all that stuff. What it showed me though is, I mean, they were wonderful to work with as a client, but I thought I didn't want to deal with them on an ongoing basis from the perspective of, having to listen to them tell me what to do and all that kind of good stuff. So I guess that just kind of made it frustrating. So I guess where I'm going with this is part of what creates value, I think, is some intangibles. Wouldn't you agree that it's like, it's the fit, it's the, how does it fit? You talked about repeatability, but it's like, how do we mesh? How do the two organizations work out? How are they going to get along? I mean, I think all of that's probably got to play a key role as well. Would you agree?
Oh, without a doubt, and well said. We have one of the episodes we did on the podcast. I asked 7 or 8 agency owners that had been through a transaction, and the question was, do you have a boss now?
Yeah.
And they all gave their flavor on that. Again, if you go to Second Bite Podcast and you put in "Do I have a boss?" you can find that episode. The most common response I got is, you don't really have a boss, you have a partner, right? The interesting thing about the people listening to this podcast is that it's very, very difficult to employ them, right? They're not employees, they're entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
They're rare people to find, and really good buyers understand what they have there. So I don't need you to now check in from 9 to 5. And what I see most common, Bill, is that the buyers will say, listen, you've been doing this amount of revenue for this amount of people and growing at this rate. That's what I want you to do. You're telling me you work from 6 a.m. to 3 and then you coach your kid for a couple hours and you work in the afternoon. I don't care. You're telling me in the winters you go down to Florida, you spend 2 months and work from there. I don't care. You know what I care about? The EBITDA number and the revenue growth you told me. I just want that. If there's anything we can do to help you with that, let us know. Otherwise, we need to talk once a quarter, once a month, whatever that period is. And that's what we want. So nobody's interested in taking and cramming you into a box and making you do something now on a regimented basis, even less so now in the age of screens. And so that's usually my response when you do a transaction that way. There should be no question about what life post-close will be like, number one. Number two, in your operating agreement or your employment agreement will very specifically point those things out. A deal we closed a month ago, my client travels a lot for the business. And we wrote it into the employment agreement. She travels business class. And she said, listen, I hate to travel. The thing that makes it kind of tolerable is I can sit in business class. So I want it in my agreement that I can fly business class. You know what the buyer said? Is Buyer said, "Are you flying business class now?" She said, "Yes, all the time." You said, "Great, I don't care. That's fine. It's an expense last year. It's an expense this year. It'll be an expense next year. Fine." Right? So people don't want to get, now, most of the stuff we read in the journal or magazines or what have you are big acquisitions. So this company's doing 500 million in revenue and they're making 40 million in EBITDA. God, if we squeezed everybody a little bit, we could take that 40 and make it 50 million. 50 million instead of 40 is a lot of money. Let's go do that. Eliminate snacks. Don't let people travel business class. Do all those things. In the world that I serve, we need more people, not less. We need growth. And growth doesn't come from, cutting back every little nuance.
Yeah, the snacks will get you though, but I mean,
Yeah, I mean, they're critical. People are used to it.
Yeah.
my agreement would have something about naps, actually. So you were taking naps last year, you're taking them this year, you're taking them, okay. I love that you brought up differentiation. We talk about that a lot on Agency Founders Network on how many, it's just almost hard to even list the number of benefits that having a clear position, what I call it, your quintessential uniqueness. And it goes straight to value. And so we actually have, we just did another master class on there about this. And, so I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because there still are a lot of generalist agencies out there. And my company's not really an agency, but I still think I could do even a better job of niching, right? But I think that's really important.
I have a gentleman will work on a project later this year. Their clients are in-home AV providers. So if you want Sonos in your house, or you want Wi-Fi, or you want those electric curtains that come up and go down and stuff, their providers are the people that do that work are their clients. They have 700 of those people around the country as their clients. And so now if I do, whatever in somebody's home, from a technology standpoint, and I want more customers, and I can go to a local guy who's generalist and very good, or I can go to those guys that do it for like everybody just like me, 9 times out of 10, I pick that guy.
Yep. The specialist will always win over the generalist for sure. So real quick, I just wanted to mention if you're listening out there in podcast land, you're only hearing like half the show. This is a video podcast. So, you can follow us on LinkedIn, or you can go to b2bmarketingmindset.com and see the rest of the show, plus 100 and some odd more episodes. So check that out. You don't want to get half of the story. And also we are the best dressed podcast. I love that. I'm going to steal that and use it now. So
it's obvious to anybody who's watching that is the case.
Well, we're trying to be different.
You succeeded at that.
Probably about 25 years ago, I was actually voted one of Milwaukee's best dressed. But that's Milwaukee, so I don't know about this. So maybe we're wearing the same thing we wore 25 years ago. So there we have it, Pete.
Still works.
This is what we looked like 25 years ago, and you were very well dressed. I was there. How to build for a sale. This is kind of fascinating for me, because, again, back in the heat of this, for me, was early 90s, and we were trying to build this company. We weren't. It didn't even cross our mind that about selling. So I think what you're saying here is, from the beginning, build it to sell it. Is that what you mean?
I to some degree, yes. I think there's a good distinction somewhere down the road, and I say this to clients all the time. If you're making $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million a year in EBITDA, and you're only growing 10% a year, and this and this and this, that's a win. That is a very successful life. You're not only successful in business, you've created jobs for multiple people, you've got happy clients. You don't have to sell your business. Just keep doing that. For me, my value system says it's tragic when the last chapter of that is just the end. Not like, well, didn't they sell it to the guys in private equity? Didn't they do this? Didn't they merge it? Didn't, and gosh, if you could do that, why wouldn't you? Right? That's just my view. I also am completely biased because I've seen it so many times be a better outcome for people when they do a transaction and find the right home and have all those things. Because as you said, Bill, with the right fit, people that you like, respect, and admire, it's it just seems to be dramatically better for people, right? You get a bunch of cash, which helps with your comfort level in life, and your risk tolerance typically changes. You're partnered with other people you like and respect, and you're growing faster doing other things that you typically couldn't have done. So from that standpoint, having a having a successful transaction that turns into something meaningful is really difficult to do. But to build an agency that creates value for your customers enough that they'll stick around for a long period of time, that's really the endeavor from that perspective. And then, depending on, as a very typical example, if you do SEO search, right? Probably everybody that's doing search is also doing paid. Are you providing paid to them? Not really. All right, well, maybe you could provide paid. I will tell you, everyone that's doing search and paid is doing email. That's for sure, right? I will tell you, a lot of those guys have inbound. Maybe they're using HubSpot. If you wanted to, you could provide creative content because video is so important these days, right? All of these questions about what do you want to do and how do you want to grow, and those. So that's one, right? Do I want to grow and do all those things? If you want to grow and do all those things, you need to keep your capital at risk. You need to hope like hell you buy somebody worthwhile that has told you the truth about everything, and that's hard to do. In the face of that, if I say to myself, well, gosh, if I'm really, really good at search, and these guys over here are already doing paid, already doing email, they've already got some technology, they've got a bunch of great clients, and and we could start cross-selling right away, and I get a bunch of cash on top of it, and I'm a shareholder in this new company. Jesus, I mean, that seems like a hell of a deal. And so those are the people that are just attracted to doing that. There's a large group of people that just need to admit to themselves, I don't want to do that. I just want to have a small agency that does good work, and I don't want all the other headaches. And that's fine. But just what I find is that when people make that conscious choice, they can relax and enjoy who it is that they are and not be uncomfortable with who they're not, right? Because it's so easy to compare to everybody else that's out there.
I can't speak for Bill, but I think it's Bill and I are that. I mean, we've kind of been at one end of that spectrum, and now I'm very intentionally at a different place. And but I do know that a lot of people will start companies with the intention fully to sell them, and I think it's a valid idea. But I actually think that if you're doing good business, it's going to lend itself to being sold if you make that decision. They're intertwined. Like, you have to be good at what you do. But we've talked about a lot of tactical providers, and I do think, and maybe this is a discussion for a different time, so we're running short on time, but one thing I think is missing from marketing is strategy. We're talking about these SEO companies and these ad companies and companies that build websites, do conversion optimization. What I have found in my research and in my doing this for a living, without an overarching strategy, it's going to be hard to be successful. Am I missing something there?
There's a progression there, right? There's a maturity there that comes. So a lot of people start in business because, the three of us are working at the ABC company, and the ABC company's not doing things right. We could do this better than them. Let's go take 3 clients and go start our own thing, right? And we do. And the thing we're good at, we're all in the SEO department, so we're doing SEO now, right? And then one time Bill comes home, he's like, listen, these guys want paid as well. And we're like, shit, we don't know how to do paid, right? So we figure it out. And then, or we say, no, we're not doing paid, just stay focused on SEO, right? And gradually over time, remember, the three of us started this business. I gotta make another mortgage payment at the end of next month. We just need more customers, right? I'll go get more. You guys do the work, and then gradually you can lift your head up and say, man, this is working out. What do we want to do next? That is where intentionality comes in, right? Here's the direction we want to go. And oftentimes when people ask that question of intentionality, it's not targeted towards, well, if we were a pure play in SEO, then we could sell it to these different groups, right? If we only focused on the medical marketplace or in-home AV or lawyers or whatever the case may be, then we'd get a better result, right? So that would be the question to ask. But there's no place to go to get the answer. Because part of that answer is I really, really enjoy working with agency owners. I don't enjoy working with engineers. I don't enjoy working with other type of personalities because it's just not as much fun for me, right? So the fact if I can combine these things, do really good work and create a ton of value for people that I enjoy working with, that's a pretty good combination of things. So I don't think you're missing anything. It depends on where you catch people in that overall evolution. And during that evolution, people come to a reasonable conclusion about who they are and who they want to be. And then this is the great thing about being an entrepreneur, is that the business reflects who I am. This is where you hear this from people that they love their business or it's my baby, like they speak of it as one of their children. It's because it reflects who they are. It reflects their values and their decision making and their temperament and all these other things. That's why people love it.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I've never seen a big company without a strategy. But clients will buy these tactics day in and day out and never give thought to any sort of overarching marketing plan. That's where we've always focused and differentiated ourselves, was that we feel like you could buy tactics anywhere, but very few companies help with strategy. But I think it's kind of falling out of favor these days. And so, in fact, let me show real quick, and I'm sorry you guys won't be able to see it just because of the way our technology is, but I have a chart here that shows EBITDA multiples for marketing agencies, and it lists company type: digital marketing, growth marketing, performance marketing, creative marketing, social media marketing, advertising, account-based marketing. It goes on like this, but it's anywhere between 4x, 10x. It's kind of all over the place. But what struck me was, I don't think that there's such clear lines between these different kinds of companies. People are going to interpret, what is growth marketing exactly? So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. There are not many firms today that only provide one service. Now they might talk about them, and my guess is somebody would look at those multiples and say, wow, growth marketing does better than performance marketing. Change the name.
Let's start
growth marketing.
Yeah.
Right. So
start calling ourselves that.
Exactly. And so at the end of the day, buyers are going to pay a multiple based on your EBITDA and probably based on other factors, because your point is excellent, Pete, which is, why is this what you're doing growth marketing and not performance marketing or inbound marketing? And the reality is it's some combination of all of those things.
Right.
But so that if I were to write an article about that, it would be 2 sentences and I wouldn't fill up, with this big graph of complicated stuff that you found. Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, and Bill was asking it. He asked me as if I would be able to answer it. I said something about SDE multiples. He said, "What the hell's that?" And I said, "I don't know. Let's ask Todd." So EBITDA is one way. SDE
is probably some type of sales number, would be my guess.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting just because I had really not heard of it. But it sounds like it's actually a little bit obscure. In fact, almost all businesses are sold on EBITDA.
Scratch.
so
All businesses are sold on EBITDA.
all businesses, okay.
Yes. Now, sometimes people say, yeah, well, we're sold based on a multiple of revenue. And the reason they say that is because EBITDA is hard to find, right? Like, for example, if you go to the Inc. list, you can see a lot of these companies reported their revenue number. So somebody had a revenue of 10 million bucks and they had 2 million of EBITDA, and somebody paid 6 times EBITDA. A $10 million business sold for $12 million. People would say, well, they sold for about 1.2 times revenue. I will tell you, if that $10 million business was doing $1 million of EBITDA, they wouldn't sell for 1.2 times revenue. They would sell for 0.6 times revenue because the EBITDA is half, right? So at the end of the day, it's what do I get to take home?
Right. Well, and it's pretty consistent across industries. So sellers' discretionary earnings,
Okay.
what that stands for.
There you go. There you
It
go.
modifies the EBITDA concept by adjusting for the unique financial decisions and benefits of business owners, especially in small to medium-sized enterprises. To me, that just sounds like it's going to confuse the whole pot.
Well, so, and here's the thing, which goes a little bit to getting ready for a sale, right? So most clients that I work with, the company is paying for the company car. The 2 weeks that we went to the beach, that was kind of business, so the company paid for that as well, right? We have the company that's actually paying for the apartment. One group literally has an apartment in town, company pays for it because he does his podcast from there, lives out in the country, right? On and on and on. And the buyer, back to my earlier buyer, says, I don't care. What is going to stop after the deal closed?
Right.
We're not going to do the apartment. By the way, I'm paying myself 400 grand. I'm going to pay myself 200 grand after the transaction. So 200 grand there goes right to EBITDA.
Right.
I'm not paying for the apartment anymore. We're going to stop paying for the car. I've got one client. They have they homeschool their kids. Teachers on the payroll. We're going to stop paying her out of the company. We're going to eliminate that. And the buyer has no value judgments. The buyer's just like, just tell me, what can I expect?
Right.
So that's a more familiar term for that would be adjusted EBITDA. It's adjusted for what the owner's been doing.
That makes a lot of sense. I just thought that was really interesting that here all these years we've been doing this and there's a term, but I see this a lot in marketing where there's an old idea that now has been rebranded with a new term, and us old guys are like, oh, there's something new. And then we look into it and we're like, no, that's the same old shit.
It's the same that it's always been. Exactly. Yeah.
But that's really interesting that I could actually rent an apartment and write it off and just for my podcast. I'm going to look into that.
Keep that in mind.
There you go.
So, Bill, as you're kind of looking at, maybe a transaction or, is it okay to talk about that? I should probably have asked you first, but.
Okay.
What? It seems like these multiples are all over the place. I mean, there doesn't really seem to be a rule of thumb. Is it kind of a deal by deal basis?
Are you asking me that, or are you asking Todd that?
Well, I guess I'm asking anybody who wants to answer.
You go first,
because
Bill,
it's really
and then I'll
confusing to me.
I think in my opinion, I would think it has to be a deal by deal, just because everybody's so unique and every company is different, and what the business owner wants is unique. I mean, so like what I want and what I need might be totally different than what you need, Pete. So, I mean, that's how I would look at it. Now, maybe Todd will tell me it doesn't matter. It's all about
I think,
so there you go.
Well, it is always about the EBITDA as determining value.
Yeah.
But I'll give you an example. Let's say, and we've never sold a business for 3 times EBITDA.
Yeah.
Because typically, most owners will say, I'll work for another year, I'll get a third, and I'll still have the whole company. I'm not selling it for 3 times EBITDA. Both of you characters are going to get to a point at one time and you're going to say, you know what, I'm done with this. So somebody's willing to pay me 2.5 times EBITDA? Fine.
Yeah.
I'm done working.
Right.
So that's a different calculus. If it's in the middle of your career, I'm not doing it for that number.
Right.
Right. And so, as you know, graying of America, there's a bunch of entrepreneurs that'll be selling their business, and there's a bunch of buyers that will pay I just don't see deals get done at 3. Again, in my category, 1 to 5 of EBITDA,
Right.
very low end is 5 times on EBITDA. Sold a couple deals in the last year that were at 9 times on EBITDA, not a little over 9 times. Um, because of they were 5 or 6 million of EBITDA and because they had great retention and all of it was recurring revenue and on from there. So it would be somewhere in that range. If you're at 1 million, I think and you've got good retention and good recurring revenue, you should be between 5 and 6 million, 5 and 6 times on EBITDA. And then the question becomes, what do you want for currency? There's 3 forms of currency. There's cash, always our favorite. There's equity in the larger company, and then there's earnout.
Right.
And so how do those 3 components mix to get you to what that number is?
Well, and then how badly does the buyer want the business? That could put a point on there. I mean, I don't know, but it does seem highly variable. So I guess my message there, or our messages to the audience, is watch out for those charts because they're not going to mean
Yes.
much, really.
And the
I
best
just
way to
thought it was
get
very
maximum,
interesting.
yeah, and the best way to get a real value for the business is to have more than one party that's interested.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's a really good point.
So let's, last talking point here that I think that I wonder if people are, if you're out there and you have a firm and you want to exit or you don't necessarily exit either. Let's say some sort of liquidation event, something. What should they look for in an M&A partner? How do they go about, what are the kinds of things that they might be looking for as somebody to represent them as a seller?
And can we even preface that, Pete, by
Sure.
saying, how would I find that person then too? Because like Todd said early on, I get letters every single day. I get emails that I blow away every single day. But like, so how would you go and find somebody that could do what you want to, or even just to talk about it? So
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's tricky. It's trickier at the lower end of the middle market, which is the category that I'm in. I will say this: if you go to the Second Bite podcast, there's a lot of people just like you guys and other founders that talk about their experience. A lot of them were clients of ours. Many of them are not. There's private equity guys on there. There's lawyers on there. There's a whole bunch of people that'll share their experience, and you'll start to pick up and learn things. Is it helpful to know the marketplace and everything else? It absolutely is. Meaning from my perspective. So the fact that I deal in the digital marketing space, I think that's a big advantage. As an example, the phone call I had before our episode was a group out of Europe, one of the largest agencies in Europe. They've hired a CEO for the US. I was talking with the US CEO and their head of M&A about their criteria for 2025 and what they want to acquire. That's a nice position to be in. There's 2 private equity groups now that are launching, that have under letter of intent yet to announce. They're buying e-commerce businesses and want to fill in other e-commerce pieces. So it's just a lot easier and more helpful for me to know who those buyers are and what they're doing and the size that they're looking for. As I say to clients all the time, if you're $12 million of EBITDA, I know who those buyers are. I know the people that would be interested. I don't know if they'll return my email or my phone call because I don't have a relationship with them. The guys at Houlihan Lokey do. The guys at Canaccord do, right? So if you're in that size, you should go to them. If you're at $1 million to 3 or 5 million of EBITDA, those guys those guys don't have a relationship with my buyers like I do. And so from that perspective, that makes a big difference in terms of getting a result done. As I say to clients all the time, I've been spending years and years and years to make this look really simple for you because we know who the buyers are. But so to your question, somebody with experience in the space, always helpful. Somebody that has done transactions, multiple transactions, that knows the business will will also be, and who you're going to work with. I talked to a guy yesterday who was with one of those larger firms, much too small for them. He was with the lead banker, and after they got him engaged, he literally never spoke with that guy. And he just worked with junior guys. And those larger firms feel like, wait a second, a junior guy at a firm like ours is certainly better than Tasky is. For God's sakes, we're a big firm, right? And that's just their belief. So those are all the nuances that you got to watch for. But educating yourself as an agency founder to all that goes on in this space, you can do, again, easily by listening to this podcast, listening to our Second Bite podcast, and just being open to some of those things, because it will be a very important transaction for you whenever that time comes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for being our guest. It's a fascinating topic, and it's an important topic, actually. And I think, I don't think there's licensing involved in terms of doing what you do, is there? I mean,
if you're much larger, like if you're doing $25-30 million EBITDA transactions, you need to be securities licensed. Otherwise, there's not.
Okay.
But to your point, Pete, it is the most important thing that we can do. As I tell clients all the time, if you do a transaction, you will remember it for the rest of your life. Yeah. It's really meaningful and important, and to get that right and to play a role in getting that right is really, a wonderful role to be able to play in the life of another. And I just couldn't be more fun. So we're happy to be able to do it.
Well, it certainly changes people's lives. So thanks again. And we're out of time, but Bill, you're looking sharp. Thank you for seeing you again. And if you guys just want to hang on while we roll out, do you have a final comment?
Who,
Bill?
me?
Oh yeah, it looked like you were going to say something, but
no, I learned so much today, and totally different perspective than I had coming into it. So I hope that all of the agency people and other individuals that were listening feel the same way, because it's a different perspective, Well,
then my job here is done.
You did a good job, Pete. You did a
join
great
us
job.
Every Thursday at 11 o'clock Central. Pretty much everywhere fine podcasts are consumed. So we'll see you, Bill, next week. And thanks again, Todd. And everybody just stand by.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfre and Bill Lowell. Add to the conversation by commenting, sharing, and liking. And don't forget to subscribe and check out the links in the comments. Learn more at b2bmarketingmindset.com.